What's up everyone, welcome back. Today I've got to tell you about something that happened to a lady named Madison, and it's honestly one of the most sophisticated scams I've ever heard of. This isn't just about a bad ride. This is about how criminals can use rideshare platforms to steal your entire identity. Madison's a grad student at NYU, so she's always broke, always looking for ways to save money. She uses rideshare apps constantly because she doesn't have a car, and she's always trying to split rides or find the cheapest options. Last fall, Madison starts getting matched with this same driver repeatedly. His name's Tony, drives a really nice BMW, always has water bottles and phone chargers for passengers. Super professional, great ratings. Madison actually starts requesting him specifically because the service is so good. Tony's friendly, but not creepy about it. Asks about her classes, remembers she's studying psychology, makes appropriate small talk. Over a few weeks, Madison feels like she's built this nice professional relationship with him. Then Tony starts offering Madison deals. Says he's trying to build up his regular customer base. Offers her rides at flat rates instead of app pricing. $20 cash for rides that would normally cost $30 through the app. Madison's broke, so this sounds great. Tony says they can arrange rides through text instead of the app. Just call him directly when she needs transportation. He's always available, prices are better, and she doesn't have to deal with surge pricing. Madison starts using Tony exclusively. He's reliable, professional, saves her money. Perfect arrangement. But Tony's collecting information every single ride. Asks about her schedule, her routine, where she works, where she banks. Not in a creepy way, just seems like friendly conversation. Madison's from a small town. She's naturally trusting, so she answers his questions. Tony learns that Madison works part-time at this boutique clothing store. He knows her class schedule, knows she usually carries her laptop bag, knows she banks at the Chase branch near campus. After about 6 weeks of regular rides, Tony tells Madison he's going to be out of town for a while. Family emergency, won't be driving for a few weeks. Madison thanks him for the heads up, goes back to using the regular apps. 2 weeks later, Madison gets a call from her bank. Suspicious activity on her account. Someone tried to open a credit card using her information, and when that was declined, they attempted to access her existing accounts. Madison thinks it's just random fraud, changes her passwords, monitors her accounts. But then weird things start happening. She gets calls from stores asking about job applications she never filled out. Credit monitoring services alert her about inquiries she didn't authorize. Someone is systematically using Madison's personal information to try to open accounts, apply for jobs, even attempting to rent apartments in her name. Madison can't figure out how someone got so much accurate information about her. They know her work history, her school schedule, her banking information, even personal details like her mother's maiden name. Then Madison gets a call that makes everything click. A manager at a different Chase branch calls to verify some information for an account opening. The person trying to open the account knew Madison's name, address, workplace, school, and claimed to be a regular customer who usually used the branch near campus. That detail, about being a regular customer at the specific Chase branch, that's something only someone who knew Madison's routine would know. Someone who had driven her there multiple times and seen her go inside. Madison realizes Tony had been collecting her personal information during all those rides. Every casual question about her life, every observation about her routine, every detail she'd shared thinking it was just friendly conversation. He was building a profile for identity theft. Madison reports everything to the police, but tracking down Tony turns out to be impossible. The phone number he gave her is disconnected. The license plate she remembered doesn't match any BMW registration. Even his name was probably fake. The cops tell Madison this is increasingly common. Criminals pose as rideshare drivers to get close to victims, collect personal information over time, then use that information for financial fraud. The beauty of the scam is that victims voluntarily get in the car, voluntarily share personal information, and trust the criminal because they seem like a legitimate service provider. Madison learns that Tony probably wasn't even a real Uber driver. He likely created fake accounts, or was using someone else's legitimate driver profile. The BMW, the professional service, the good ratings, all designed to build trust and get regular access to victims. Madison spends months dealing with the aftermath. Credit reports, fraud alerts, police reports, trying to undo damage to accounts she didn't even know had been compromised. The financial loss wasn't huge, but the violation of having her entire identity stolen was devastating. The scariest part is how long-term Tony's plan was. He spent weeks building trust, learning Madison's routine, collecting information bit by bit. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. It was a calculated, systematic operation. Madison found out later that Tony had probably targeted multiple students in her area. Young people who use rideshares frequently, live on predictable schedules, and might be trusting enough to share personal information. The police investigation revealed that Madison's information had been sold to other criminals. Her identity was being used by multiple people for different types of fraud, credit applications, job applications, even someone trying to collect unemployment benefits in her name. Madison had to completely change her banking, get new social security number, rebuild her credit history. The identity theft affected her for years. She got denied for apartments, had trouble with background checks for jobs, constantly had to prove she was the real Madison and not one of the people using her stolen identity. And now Madison can't trust rideshare drivers anymore. Every friendly question feels like they might be collecting information. Every professional driver who remembers details about her life feels potentially threatening. Madison never found out Tony's real name or whether he was ever caught. For all she knows, he's still out there, building trust with other victims, collecting information for the next round of identity theft. The thing that haunts Madison most is how good Tony was at his job. He made her feel safe, valued as a customer, like she was getting a great deal. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was personal. She trusted him with her safety every time she got in his car, and he was using that trust to destroy her financial future. Okay, this story is probably the most intense one I'm going to share, and it comes from a guy, Marcus, who was visiting LA for the first time. Marcus is from rural Ohio, has no idea about big city dynamics, street politics, nothing. Just a college kid trying to have a good time in California. So Marcus is staying with his cousin in Hollywood, and they decide to check out this club in South LA that supposedly has amazing hip-hop shows. His cousin knows the area pretty well, but Marcus is riding solo back to Hollywood afterward because his cousin hooked up with someone and left early. It's like 2:30 a.m. Marcus calls an Uber. Gets matched with this driver named Damon, driving a lowered Chevy Impala with tinted windows and custom rims. Already not what Marcus expected, but the license plate matches, driver photo looks right. Marcus gets in, and immediately he can tell Damon's different from other Uber drivers. Gold teeth, lots of tattoos, music playing way louder than usual. But Damon seems friendly enough, asks Marcus where he's from, what he's doing in LA. Marcus mentions he's from Ohio, just visiting, checking out the music scene. Damon laughs and says something like, "Ohio boy, huh? You picked an interesting night to be in this neighborhood." Marcus doesn't really know what that means, so he just makes polite conversation. But as they're driving, Damon keeps taking calls. Short conversations, mostly just "yeah, I see them," or "how many," or "which block." Marcus starts paying attention to where they're going. They're not taking the direct route to Hollywood. Instead, Damon's driving through all these residential neighborhoods, making seemingly random turns, stopping at corners for no reason. At one point, Damon pulls over and tells Marcus, "Hold tight for a second, I need to handle something." He gets out of the car, walks over to this group of guys standing by a convenience store, has a quick conversation, then comes back. Marcus is starting to get nervous. This doesn't feel like a normal Uber ride anymore. But Damon seems calm, keeps reassuring Marcus that everything's cool. They're just taking a scenic route. Then Marcus notices other cars following them. Not right behind them, but the same vehicles keep appearing at different intersections. Damon notices too, keeps checking his mirrors, making sudden turns. "Yo, Ohio," Damon says. "I'm gonna need you to get down in the seat, okay? Just for a few minutes." Marcus is like, "What? Why? Just trust me, man. Some people might be looking for this car tonight, and you don't want to be seen with me right now." That's when Marcus realizes he's not in an Uber ride anymore. He's somehow gotten caught up in whatever street situation Damon's involved in. Marcus ducks down, but he can hear Damon making more calls, talking about territory and retaliation, and they hit our spot. Marcus realizes Damon's probably gang-affiliated, and they're driving through rival territory or something equally dangerous. The car stops suddenly. Marcus hears voices outside, multiple people surrounding the vehicle. Damon tells Marcus to stay down and keep quiet. Through the windows, Marcus can see shadows of people with their hands under their shirts, clearly armed. Someone's arguing with Damon about why he's in this area, who's in the car with him, what he's doing here. Damon's trying to explain that he's just driving, doing his job, but these guys don't believe him. They think Marcus might be a rival gang member or an undercover cop or something. One of the guys outside demands that Marcus get out of the car so they can see who he is. Damon's arguing with them, saying Marcus is just a customer, not involved in anything. Marcus is terrified. He's lying in the back seat of a gang member's car, surrounded by armed people who think he might be a threat. He has no idea what's going on, what the conflict is about, or how dangerous the situation really is. Finally, Damon tells Marcus to slowly sit up, keep his hands visible, and let these guys see that he's clearly not a threat. Marcus sits up, and immediately everyone can tell he's just some scared college kid from Ohio. The tension breaks. The guys outside start laughing, calling Marcus tourist and lost boy. But they're still not happy about Damon being in their territory. They tell Damon he has 5 minutes to get out of the area and not come back tonight. Damon nods, gets back in the car, and drives off quickly. Marcus is shaking. He asks Damon what just happened, and Damon explains that he's been having problems with some other crews lately. Territory disputes, retaliation for something that happened last week, typical street politics. Damon admits he probably shouldn't be driving for Uber while this situation is hot, but he needs the money and figured late-night rides would be safer than his usual activities. Marcus just wants to get back to his cousin's place, but Damon says they need to be careful about the route. Can't go through certain neighborhoods, has to avoid specific streets where people might be looking for his car. What should have been a 20-minute ride takes over an hour. Damon's constantly watching for other vehicles, taking random detours, making stops to check with people about whether certain areas are safe to drive through. At one point, Damon gets a call saying someone's been shot in retaliation for whatever incident started all this. Damon's worried the violence is escalating, and being seen driving around might make him a target. Marcus realizes he's basically being held hostage in an active gang war. Every minute he stays in Damon's car, he's at risk of getting caught in crossfire or being mistaken for someone involved in the conflict. Finally, they make it to Hollywood, but Damon doesn't drop Marcus off at his cousin's building. Says it's not safe to be seen at Marcus's actual destination in case anyone's following them. Marcus gets out 3 blocks away and walks the rest of the way. Damon drives off immediately, doesn't wait to make sure Marcus gets inside safely. Marcus finds out later that there was a shooting that night in the same area where they got stopped. 2 people killed, several others injured. Gang retaliation that had been building for weeks. If Marcus had requested his ride 30 minutes later, or if they'd taken a different route, they might have driven right into an active gunfight. Marcus reports the incident to Uber, but what's he going to say? That his driver was gang-affiliated and got him caught up in territory disputes? Uber's response is basically that they can't control what happens in certain neighborhoods. The really scary part is that Marcus had no way of knowing any of this when he got in the car. Damon seemed like any other driver. His ratings were fine. Nothing in the app indicated he might be involved in dangerous activities. Marcus could have been killed that night, just for being in the wrong car at the wrong time in the wrong neighborhood. And it would have been completely random. He had no connection to the gang conflict, no reason to be targeted except that he happened to be riding with Damon. Marcus doesn't use ride shares in unfamiliar cities anymore. Says he had no idea that getting in a random car could put him in the middle of street violence that had nothing to do with him. Marcus never found out what happened to Damon, or whether the gang situation got resolved. For all he knows, Damon's still driving for Uber, still potentially putting random passengers at risk. Alright, so this story of something that happened to my roommate Alex last month that honestly still gives me nightmares. This is why I always tell people, you never know what kind of situation you're going to walk into when you get in someone else's car. So Alex had been out in Brooklyn visiting his cousin, right? Normal Saturday night, they hung out, watched some games, had a few beers. Nothing crazy. Around midnight, Alex calls an Uber to head back to Manhattan. Gets matched with this driver named Carlos, driving a black SUV. Carlos pulls up, and Alex immediately notices the guy looks off. Like really pale, sweating a lot, and he's gripping the steering wheel super tight. But you know how it is. You don't want to judge people. Maybe the guy's just tired. Maybe he had a long day. Alex gets in, gives Carlos his address, and they start driving. But within like 2 minutes, Alex realizes something's seriously wrong. Carlos is swerving slightly, not staying in his lane properly. His breathing is really heavy, like he's struggling. Alex asks, "Hey man, are you okay?" Carlos just nods, but he's clearly not okay. His hands are shaking on the wheel, and Alex can see sweat literally dripping down the back of his neck. They're on the Manhattan Bridge when it happens. Carlos suddenly slams on the brakes in the middle of traffic. Cars are honking, people are swerving around them. Carlos is clutching his chest, making these horrible gasping sounds. Alex realizes Carlos is having a heart attack. Right there, driving 40 miles per hour over the East River with Alex trapped in the back seat. The SUV starts drifting toward the guardrail. Alex has maybe 3 seconds to make a decision. Try to grab the wheel from the back seat, or let this guy potentially drive them both off the bridge. Alex lunges forward, reaches over Carlos, who's now completely unconscious, and grabs the steering wheel. He's trying to steer while Carlos's dead weight is slumped against the gas pedal, so they're still accelerating toward the guardrail. Alex manages to yank the wheel hard left, but now they're heading into oncoming traffic. He's screaming, cars are laying on their horns, and he's trying to reach Carlos's foot to get it off the gas pedal. Finally, Alex gets his hand on the gear shift and throws it into park. The SUV jerks to a stop right in the middle of the bridge. Traffic is backing up in both directions. People are getting out of their cars. It's absolute chaos. Alex calls 911, starts doing CPR on Carlos right there in the front seat. He learned it in high school, never thought he'd actually use it. Carlos is completely blue, not breathing, no pulse. The ambulance takes like 15 minutes to get through all the traffic on the bridge. Alex is doing chest compressions the entire time, with random strangers helping him, everyone just trying to keep this guy alive. EMTs finally arrive, take over CPR, get Carlos stabilized enough to transport. But here's the really messed up part. While they're loading Carlos into the ambulance, one of the EMTs mentions that Carlos had called 911 earlier that evening. He was having chest pains, knew something was wrong, but instead of going to the hospital, he kept driving for Uber to make money. Carlos had been having heart problems for months. No health insurance, couldn't afford to take time off work, so he just kept pushing through it. That night, he was literally dying behind the wheel, but couldn't afford to stop working. Alex finds out later that Carlos survived, had to have emergency surgery, was in the ICU for a week. But if Alex hadn't grabbed that wheel when he did, they both would have gone over the side of that bridge. Uber's response to all this was to refund Alex's ride and send him a $20 credit. That's it. No acknowledgement that their driver almost killed a passenger because he couldn't afford health care. No policy changes, nothing. Alex tried to visit Carlos in the hospital, but Carlos's family was really hostile toward him. They blamed Alex for Carlos getting in trouble with Uber, like it was Alex's fault their dad got suspended from driving after having a heart attack on the job. Turns out Carlos was the sole provider for his family, wife, 3 kids, elderly mother. He'd been driving 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week, because Uber was his only income source. When he started having chest pains, he couldn't afford to see a doctor, couldn't afford to take time off. Alex learned that there are tons of drivers in similar situations. No benefits, no health insurance, no safety net. They keep driving even when they're sick, exhausted, or dealing with serious medical issues because missing work means their families don't eat. The really haunting part of this story isn't just that Alex almost died that night. It's that Carlos was willing to risk killing himself and a passenger rather than lose a night's income. That's how desperate his situation was. Alex doesn't use ride shares anymore unless he absolutely has to. Says every time he gets in an Uber, he wonders what kind of desperation the driver might be hiding, what they might be pushing through just to make ends meet. Carlos never drove for Uber again. Alex heard he took a job at a warehouse with health benefits, making way less money, but at least he can afford to see a doctor now. The whole thing really messed with Alex's head. He keeps thinking about those few seconds when he had to choose between grabbing the wheel and potentially making things worse, or doing nothing and definitely dying. But mostly he thinks about how screwed up it is that someone was so desperate for money that they'd rather risk death than miss a shift. Alright, so this story is from a lady named Jenna, and it's honestly changed how she thinks about rideshare safety completely. Jenna works at this upscale restaurant downtown, makes good tips, usually carries a decent amount of cash on her. This is important for what happens later. So it's a Friday night, Jenna's working a double shift, gets off around 2 a.m. She's exhausted, has like $300 in tips stuffed in her purse. Really good night. The restaurant's in a safe area, but her apartment is in this neighborhood that gets sketchy after dark. Jenna requests her Uber, gets matched with a driver named Miguel. Clean car, good ratings, seems totally normal. Miguel shows up right on time, confirms her name, and they head out. But here's where things start getting weird. Miguel immediately starts asking about her work. You work at that fancy place? Must make good money there, right? Friday night's probably pretty busy, huh? Jenna's used to chatty drivers, so she makes polite conversation. Mentions it was a busy night, good tips, but doesn't get specific about amounts or anything. Miguel keeps pushing though. Yeah, I bet people tip well at places like that. Cash tips too, right? Most servers I pick up from downtown spots are carrying some serious money. Now Jenna's starting to feel uncomfortable. This isn't casual conversation anymore. Miguel's specifically fishing for information about how much money she has on her. They're about halfway to her apartment when Miguel takes a call. He's speaking Spanish, which Jenna understands some of, and she catches a few words that make her blood run cold. He's giving someone their location, describing what she looks like, mentioning something about after the drop-off. Jenna pretends not to understand, but she's quietly opening her phone to text her roommate. Something's wrong with my Uber driver. Think he's setting me up for something. Call police if you don't hear from me in 20 minutes. Miguel finishes his call and suddenly becomes super friendly, asking about her building, which in trance she uses if she lives alone. Red flags everywhere. When they get to Jenna's street, Miguel doesn't stop at her building. He drives past it and parks around the corner where it's darker, fewer streetlights. This good, he asks. Jenna's like, actually, can you drop me right in front? Building 447. Miguel hesitates, then says his car's making a weird noise, doesn't want to drive any further. Insists the spot is fine, it's only a block away. Jenna knows something's up. She can see her building from where they are, but she'd have to walk through this dark stretch with no witnesses around. Perfect spot for a robbery. She makes a quick decision. Tells Miguel she needs to make a call before getting out. Dials 911 and starts speaking loudly enough for Miguel to hear. Saying, "Hi, yes, I'm at the corner of my street," mentioned her street name. "I'm about to get out of my Uber." She mentioned the license plate number 2. "Can you have a patrol car swing by in about 5 minutes? Just want to make sure I get inside safely." Miguel's face goes white. He immediately starts the car and says, "Actually, let me just drop you right at your door." But Jenna's not getting out anywhere near her building now. She tells the 911 operator she's changed her mind. Needs to be dropped off at the 24-hour diner 3 blocks away instead. Lots of lights, people around, security cameras. Miguel's clearly agitated, keeps checking his mirrors, making more phone calls in Spanish. Jenna catches him saying something about plans changed and too risky now. When they get to the diner, Jenna practically jumps out of the car. Miguel speeds off immediately, doesn't even wait for her to close the door properly. Jenna goes inside the diner, orders coffee, and calls a different rideshare to get home. While she's waiting, she notices a car circling the block. Same make and model as Miguel's Uber, but she can't see the plates clearly. 20 minutes later, her new ride arrives. Different company, female driver. Everything seems normal. But when they drive past Jenna's building, there are 2 guys standing on the corner where Miguel had wanted to drop her off. Just standing there, looking at everyone who walks by, clearly waiting for someone. Jenna asked her new driver to take her to her friend's place instead. She doesn't go home until the next morning when her roommate can meet her outside. When Jenna reports the incident to Uber, they initially say they'll investigate. But a week later, they tell her there's no evidence of wrongdoing. Miguel's still active on the platform, still picking up passengers. Only told Jenna about Miguel's past issues and that Miguel had been flagged before for suspicious route behavior and inappropriate passenger questions. But nothing severe enough to get him banned. Later on, Jenna finds online forums where people discuss exactly this kind of setup. Drivers who work with robbery crews, identifying passengers who might be carrying cash or valuables, then coordinating drop-offs in isolated areas. Restaurant workers are apparently common targets because they usually carry cash tips and work late hours when there are fewer witnesses around. Jenna learns that some drivers even track regular passengers' routines, figure out when people get paid, when they're likely to have money on them, where they're most vulnerable. The system makes it easy. Drivers know your name, your exact location, your destination, and your approximate schedule if you're a regular user. They can see when you're alone, when you're in unfamiliar areas, when you might be vulnerable. Jenna never found out if those guys on the corner were actually there for her, or if she just got paranoid. But she's not willing to take that chance. She doesn't use ride shares when she's carrying cash anymore. Changed her pickup and drop-off points to always be in well-lit, busy areas. Never gives specific information about her work or schedule to drivers. Most importantly, Jenna learned to trust her instincts. When Miguel started asking too many questions about her money, she should have ended the ride immediately. When he took that phone call and started giving their location, she should have called 911 right then. The thought that keeps her up at night isn't just that she might have been robbed. It's how organized the whole thing seemed. Miguel wasn't just some opportunistic driver. He was working with other people, had a system, probably did this regularly. How many other passengers did Miguel set up? How many people got hurt because they didn't pick up on the warning signs like Jenna did? Jenna still wonders if she overreacted that night. But then she remembers those two guys standing on the corner, exactly where Miguel wanted to drop her off. And she knows she made the right call.